All right, there we go. Sound now. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show from beautiful Barcelona, Spain. I hope you all are doing phenomenally well. I was saying earlier that when I didn't have any sound, I was saying earlier that the internet has been super spotty today. Earlier today, just basically almost no internet. So it seems to have stabilized and at a decent speed. So let's hope that this is sustainable as is the rest of the equipment, and that everything will be fine, and that we can have a good show and keep the show going. All right. Let's just jump in, I guess. We'll jump in. Quickly, just a couple of continued comments on a situation in Israel as Israelis into another night of kind of sitting on pins and needles and trying to figure out whether the Iranians and Hezbollah are going to launch the promised reprisal attack. I think Israel is in high alert. The Israeli military is on high alert. Civilians are on high alert. There's constant conflicting rumors, conflicting information coming out of Iran, coming out of the Biden administration. Some people saying, yeah, Iran's going to strike any moment now. Others are saying, no, the Iran's waiting to see if a ceasefire in Gaza can be achieved. I guess there's some meeting on the 15th of August to discuss that ceasefire agreement. So maybe they're waiting for that. I'm skeptical of all of that. There continues to be battles in the Gaza. 2 rockets today were fired from inside the Gaza Strip towards Tel Aviv. They fell in the Mediterranean Sea, way off target. But the very fact that Hamas can still launch rockets is pretty distressing. Immediately, the Israelis let the residents of the neighborhood from which the rockets were fired, let them know that they should evacuate immediately as the Israeli army would enter the neighborhood. I mean, that in and of itself is kind of funny and ludicrous, if you will. The very fact that Israel's letting them evacuate, letting them get out of there, not penalizing them instantly for what has just happened. This is why the war is taking so long. So all these civilians will leave, Israel will come in, maybe they'll destroy a few tunnels, maybe they'll kill a few Hamas members, maybe not, because maybe those Hamas members will also evacuate to the so-called humanitarian areas, which Israel is not attacking, and then Israel will leave, and then they'll come back, and I mean, it's whack-a-mole. At some point, Israel will kill enough of Hamas to make a real substantial long-term difference. But it's taking and going to take much longer than it should, and all in order to save lives of Palestinians. Lives of Palestinians which are made miserable and made horrific, not that I care that much, but made horrific by the very fact that this war is going on forever. And it's going on forever because Israel's making it impossible to spare civilian lives. In Lebanon, it seems that many supporters of the Hezbollah and many Hezbollah are evacuating or leaving the stronghold neighborhood in southern Lebanon, of where the Hezbollah maintains bases and command posts, and where the people affiliated with the Hezbollah live, afraid of Israeli attacks on that neighborhood, afraid they'd be caught up in those attacks. They are leaving those neighborhoods, and many of them are trying to rent places elsewhere in Beirut. I saw a video online of a young woman, Christian Lebanese, saying, "Stay out of our neighborhoods. We don't want you here. You started this war. You suffer the consequences of the war. Why are you coming over here? We don't want you." So the situation in Lebanon is very fraught. It is very tense. Most Lebanese don't want a war with Israel. It is, and most blame whatever war is going to happen on the Hezbollah. And of course, a war with Israel could very well lead to a civil war within Lebanon. Actually, that would be a good outcome. Maybe the Lebanese will finally take control of their own country and discipline the Hezbollah and put them in their place. And ultimately, the only solution there, if Israel is not going to invade Lebanon and take it and do it all itself, is for the Lebanese themselves to disarm the Hezbollah. But in the meantime, Hezbollah has well over 100,000 rockets of various strength, various ranges, thousands that can reach Tel Aviv, certainly Haifa. Most of, I'd say 80% of the territory of Israel is within range of Hezbollah rockets. And everybody's just waiting to see what happens. In the meantime, the Biden administration has sent its emissaries all over the Middle East to beg for peace. And trying to influence Iran not to launch an attack. I think this is a massive mistake. I mean, the actual position of the United States should be, please launch an attack. Please attack our bases in Iraq and Syria and Jordan. Please, oh please, give us the excuse to wipe you guys out. Give us the excuse to inflict regime change on Iran. Give us the excuse to eliminate from the world the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Please, we want a region-wide war because we want to defeat Iran. And even if the United States itself doesn't have the guts to actually win that war, all right, let's have the war out. Let Israel and Saudi Arabia and whoever else would like to participate in this war wipe the Iranians out and launch a truly new era in the Middle East. I mean, without Iran, without the Iranian regime, cultivating every terrorist organization in the area, without the Iranian regime supporting terrorism and supporting the destruction of the State of Israel and supporting all forms of violence and destruction, the Middle East could, still would have problems, but could put itself on a path towards a much better world. So I would say the Americans should pretty please ask the Iranians to attack, including attacking America. So that, because America needs an excuse, right? Because they can't just do it out of a preemptive identification of Iran as a real threat to American national interest. Couldn't do it preemptively because of the fact that Iran's been at war with the United States since 1979. No, we can't do that. So what the United States actually needs is Iran to give it an excuse. Iran seems like it's completely happy and willing to give them an excuse. So its diplomats should stop begging them to stop, should stop promoting so-called peace, and should start actively encouraging the Iranians to engage. Anyway, that would be a proper foreign policy, and that would be, a proper foreign policy wouldn't ask the Iranians to do it. We would just go out there and destroy the Iranian regime. And encourage the Iranian people to replace them with somebody and something a lot better. But that is not the world we live in. All right, let's see. Okay, so let's talk about the Trump campaign. I've been listening to a bunch of stuff from kind of Republican strategists, people who are basically pro-Trump, although they're not enthusiastic about Trump, but they would certainly vote for Trump, work for Trump, and try to promote Trump. So I've been listening to comments, and really you get the same message from anybody who wants Trump to win. And that's the message really we heard from Cliff Asness yesterday. I read you a tweet that Cliff Asness wrote yesterday. And that is, Please, oh please, Trump. I mean, this sounds so familiar. Stay on message. Stay on message, with regard to why you would be better than Kamala Harris. Talk about issues. Attack Kamala for her leftism. Attack Kamala for her incompetence. Attack Kamala for her ideas. Attack Kamala as a representative of what Americans clearly hate, which is the far left. Attack her and her vice president of choice for the fact that they represent ideas that Americans hate. Woke, defund the police, inflation, blame her for all the bad stuff that you perceive Biden has done. I don't know, crisis at the border, whatever, illegal immigrants and all of that. Just hammer away at Harris as incredibly destructive and representative of ideas that are anti-American and that Americans hate. And everybody really believes that if he did that, he has a real chance of winning, and that he probably would win. But they all recognize he is not capable of actually doing that. Donald Trump is a whining, complaining, narcissistic moron who cannot stay focused on message and who cannot, just talk about issues. And when he does talk about issues, he makes them so ludicrous and absurd and out of proportion and ridiculous that, that nobody can take him seriously. For example, the latest one is Trump is just going on and on and on about the fact that Kamala Harris has the crowds that are coming to Kamala's, rallies are very small. And then when you see pictures of large numbers of people, that is all AI generated. So, this is the latest shtick from Trump is it's all AI generated. Don't believe anything you see. It's crowd sizes. It's all fake. It's all fake. Now, remember, this is the Donald Trump whose first really act as president of the United States, his first almost comments as president of the United States in 2017 were, putting up pictures and arguing that the crowd size in his inauguration was the largest crowd size in history, ever. Nobody has ever had more people at their inaugural address than Trump, which was obviously blatantly false. But he went on and on about this and generated all kinds of, satellite photos to show it, even though the satellite photos showed the opposite. So he's not completely sane. He's not completely there. One has to wonder about his own mental state. But this is a clear sign of narcissism. The obsession about I'm bigger than you. Mine is bigger than yours, and his single-mindedly focus on nonsense like that. So anyway, huge frustration among Republicans that he's focusing on things like that, on ridiculous, numbers and accusations. 20 million people, 20 million illegal immigrants across the border, instead of actually dealing with the issues, and issues where he probably might be closer to the American people than Kamala, and issues where he could potentially, win, rather than all this nonsense that America's, they don't want to hear it. That he won the 2020 election, that, Kamala's generating crowds from AI and everything. All this stuff, he just comes across as a whiner, as a loser, which I thought I thought is the best characterization of Trump. I mean, in the primaries, they should have called him Loser Trump, because Trump the loser, because again, he lost in 2020, but you could argue he lost the Senate and the House for the Republicans in 2018 and then in 2022. Nobody picked up on that. But the real characteristic of Trump is that, with the exception of 2016, he has been a loser when he didn't need to lose. When he didn't need to lose. It's not even, he plays the victim, which is typically a leftist thing, to play the victim. But he has mastered it and perfected it and made it now Republicans are just as much as whiners and complainers and play the victim as Democrats do. So a lot of frustration out there. Now, Trump yesterday was on with Elon Musk on X, doing an interview. Elon is trying to raise the profile of X as an attempt to, as a place to do interviews and a place to really affect the discussion, and he's been very successful. I mean, X, or Twitter, as I like to call it, Twitter is incredibly influential. It is the place in which ideas get discussed. It is, I think, much more relevant than many of the other social media platforms, even if the others have a lot more members. Twitter seems, in terms of public policy, to be the place where stuff is being debated and discussed. So Elon Musk yesterday interviewed Donald Trump on Twitter. Trump was, himself. He wasn't. He seemed to be what I would call his best behavior, which is not necessarily good, but not necessarily great, but it's better than him ranting and raving and going off on tangents. He was relatively focused in this interview. It was relatively okay. He said a number of things that obviously, Elon Musk was not happy with. There was some issue about climate change. Trump said something about, it's not a problem for 100 years. And Elon Musk, if we do the transition, if we go to renewable energies, then maybe we're okay in 100 years, maybe, but we have to transition in the meantime. And so they disagreed about that. But generally, Musk was very supportive and very positive about Trump. He's endorsed Trump already for president. Trump also said, something like he welcomes climate change, and he'll have more oceanfront property and stuff like that. I'm sure Musk didn't like that, given that Musk has built his career, in a sense, on climate change, on electrifying and going to electric motors, on catastrophizing climate change. It is kind of funny to see Elon Musk having to hear Trump and not being really able to say anything about it as Trump goes on and on. They did agree on immigration, although even here, Trump went on and on about how awful illegal immigrants are, and Musk, who's a much more reasonable human being, of course, than Donald Trump is, Musk said that people who enter the country illegally are, quote, are actually good, hardworking people. But some aren't, but most are. Trump was having none of that. I mean, they were basically all criminals and non-productive people, and they were flooding. They were rough people. Quote, these are people we don't want in our country. So again, Musk had to kind of present his more moderate ideas, disagree, but in the end, not disagree too harshly with Trump. Musk did propose being on some kind of commission to improve government efficiency, because that's what we need. We need an IRS that's more efficient at catching you. We need a government that's more efficiently regulating our businesses. We need a government more efficiently controlling what we do and how we do it. That's the problem we have. Anyway, Musk has offered his great talents to be used by the U.S. government to increase efficiency. God, I mean, this is the problem, right? They'll talk about waste and efficiency. I mean, who's not against improving waste and efficiency in government? I mean, everybody's left, right, center, the whole point, though, is not about efficiency. The whole point is about the scope and the role and the purpose of government, not about tinkering here and tinkering there. I mean, Musk should know better, right? It's about shrinking government, but it's shrinking government scope more importantly than shrinking government size. Now, if you shrink the scope, the size will shrink a lot. And it's about doing it smartly, about doing it thoughtfully, about figuring out what to shrink first and how to shrink it. But of course, they can't say that because the American people don't want their government to shrink. The American people, if anything, want their government to expand. They want a bigger government. They want a more engaged government. They want a more involved government. So, yeah, I mean, they're talking about efficiency and you know, Musk is all excited about going into government and helping it achieve efficiency. Yeah, not what is needed. Anyway, you know, this conversation went on. You can hear it on X. Not particularly interesting, I don't think. Interesting, in the Wall Street Journal has an opinion piece out today with the title of, maybe they've been listening to Yaron Brook show, I don't know, but the title is "Trump is looking like a loser again." Yep, he was looking great in comparison to Joe Biden. But you got to give Kamala Harris credit. She's going out there and just showing up. Younger, she's in her 50s, energetic. Whoops, looks like we lost some connectivity here. All right, let's see if we can get this back. Stream is turning into a slideshow. Let's see what we can do here. Yeah, basically the internet is going to zero. All right, we have a little bit. Never mind, it's bad again. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's bad. Okay, so it's on his end. It's on my end, not on your end. Let's see if I can do something here. Everybody's joined, and I get trouble. What if right, do you guys have anything back? So unplug the internet and plug it back in. Okay, now. It's bad, intermittent feed. Yep, it's struggling here. It reminds me of the technical problems that Elon Musk had yesterday with X. Same thing. He couldn't get it on, couldn't get it running. He claimed there was some kind of cyber attack on it, but I doubt that is true. All right, so let's just go on. I don't know if you have any video. Let me know if you have any video, but hopefully pretty lame. I'd say pretty lame. 1 second. All right. I guess. Let me see if I do this, what happens. Capture the buffering. All right, can you guys hear? Any sounds? Okay. Huh. clipping out sounds. Okay. One of the issues that Trump All right, we're going to drop the video and let's see if you get if you can hear the sound without the video. So the video's dropped. Let's see if you can get has said negative things about the possibility of unions at Tesla, and that any unions at Tesla would be a very, very bad sign. In Trump Trump came out. Trump came out in the interview and basically complimented Musk on his ability to fire people. To quote Trump, he said, "You walk in, you say you want to quit. They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say that's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone." So Trump basically advocated for firing striking workers, and Musk kind of laughed in support, didn't really say much. Anyway, as a consequence of this exchange between Elon Musk and United Auto Workers, right? The United Auto Workers filed federal labor charges against both Trump and Elon Musk because of their conversation. The union flagged, the comment that I just read to you as intimidating and threatening. It turns out that it is illegal to threaten or intimidate workers who stand up for themselves by engaging in protected, concerted activity such as strikes. Now, this is just unbelievable. It is truly unbelievable that our laws restrict one's ability to speak, restrict one's ability to, threaten to fire somebody, or to, threat to fire striking workers, that it restricts your freedom of speech. Again, it's illegal to threaten to fire workers for going on strike, or to actually do so. And Trump, in a hypothetical at least, did exactly that. He threatened workers that he would fire them. I mean, this is, truly unbelievable. And it's an example of the fact that in the United States of America, we might have freedom of speech when it comes to, political speech and maybe other forms of speech. But in one area in which we do not have freedom of speech, the one area that the courts have not protected and defending freedom of speech is the area of commercial speech, is the area of business. It is unbelievable to me that you can file a claim against, against somebody for hypothetically saying that if there was a strike, I would fire the people. UAW President Shawn Fain said in a statement, both Trump and Musk want working class people to sit down and shut up, and they can be illegal. I mean, to say that it's illegal is to say we have no freedom of speech. I mean, it should be completely legal to be able to talk about your views of union. I mean, what this basically says is you cannot talk about striking employees. You cannot talk about unions unless you support them. I mean, this is a massive violation of the free speech of Trump and Musk. And it is an absolute disgrace that in the United States of America, anybody would take such a claim seriously, that such a claim would have any legs, that such a claim could be made. Now we'll see. This is in front of the the Labor Board, of course, the National Labor Relations. Striking how in America, business, commercial, what's called commercial speech, business speech, has no protection under the Constitution, according to our Supreme Court, has no protection for speech. And this is one example. I mean, if I was on the Supreme Court, I would take up a case like this and rip them to shreds. But there you go. I'm not on the Supreme Court. All right, one other issue related, well, two issues related to Trump's appearance yesterday on Elon Musk thing. Twitter, of course, has much greater reach, much greater influence than Trump's own platform. It's going to be super interesting to see what happens when he starts ranting on Twitter and getting the kind of visibility that he used to have before Twitter kicked him off. In response to that, and in response to the interview, or really before the interview even, was launched, but when it was announced, Thierry Breton, who is the digital commissioner of the European Union, sent a letter to Elon Musk warning him that he better behave himself. I'm gonna read you parts of this letter, but talk about fascism. Talk about violations of free speech. Talk about a fascist approach to social media, a fascist approach to business, a fascist approach to speech. Here's what he wrote. I'm writing to you in the context of recent events in the United Kingdom. This is the UK riots. And in relation to the planned broadcast on your platform X of a live conversation between a US presidential candidate and yourself, which will also be accessible to users in the EU. I understand that you are currently doing a stress test of the platform. Really? In this context, I'm compelled to remind you of the due diligence obligations set out in the Digital Services Act, this is the European Union Act, as outlined in my previous letter. As the individual entity ultimately controlling a platform with over 300 million users worldwide, of which 1/3 in the EU, that has been designated as a very large online platform. This is a special designation under the law. You have the legal obligation to ensure X's compliance with EU law, and in particular the DSA and the EU. DSA, again, the Digital Service Act. This notably means ensuring, on one hand, that freedom of expression and of information, including media freedom and pluralism, are effectively protected, and on the other hand, that all proportionate and effective mitigation measures are put in place regarding the amplification of harmful content in connection with relevant events, including live streaming, which, if unaddressed, might increase the risk profile of X and generate detrimental effects on civic discourse and public security. That is a long sentence, but basically it says you have to protect free speech and speech on the platform, but you have to be proportional, and you can't allow an amplification of certain ideas that we in the EU Commission view as inflammatory or misinformation or harmful or might hurt a European. The civic discourse might hurt the civic discourse and public security. He goes on, this is important against the background of recent examples of public unrest brought about by the amplification of content that promotes hatred, disorder, incitement to violence, or certain instances of disinformation. He's talking here about the UK riots. It also implies, 1, informing EU judicial and administrative authorities without undue delay on the measures taken to address their orders against content considered illegal according to national and/or EU law. Remember, the EU laws have hate speech provisions. Hate speech provisions. 2, taking timely, diligent, non-arbitrary, and objective actions upon receipt of notices by users considering certain content illegal. I don't know what illegal content is. 3, informing users concerning the measures taken upon receipt of the relevant notice. And 4, publicly reporting about content moderation measures. In other words, they're expecting Elon Musk to buy into the hate speech laws of the EU and to take action to mitigate them, to stop them, to suppress them on his platform. And of course, to let the risk-based approach of DSA, which requires greater due diligence in case of foreseeable increase of risk profile, whatever the hell all that means. As you know, formal proceedings are already ongoing against X under the DSA, notably in areas linked to dissemination of illegal content and effectiveness of the measures taken to combat disinformation. Now note, illegal content here means hate speech, means speech that some EU commission thinks is inappropriate. I mean, this is just despicable. I mean, the appropriate response of X should be to basically stop broadcasting in Europe. It should block all IP addresses originating in Europe. It should tell its European customer VPN Express is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show, and you can get 3 extra months free if you go to vpnexpress.com/Yaron. It's right under there. ExpressVPN, not VPN Express. ExpressVPN.com/Yaron, and you can get 3 extra weeks. Anyway, why not just cut the Europeans off and let those who really want to listen or keep following the X use a VPN in order to access it. I mean, Europe's nuts. Europe has abandoned any semblance of the idea of freedom of speech. They are going full on against the very principles that made Europe special, that made Western civilization special. They are basically rejecting the whole premise of the Enlightenment and the intellectual freedom, the freedom of thought, and the freedom to express. And you're seeing it in the threats coming out of the UK towards Musk, and even thoughts of arresting him because what did he do? Amplified certain ideas, false ideas even, things I disagree with Musk about, things that I think Musk is absolutely wrong about, but that the government has no right to silence, has no right to limit. Now, states, we have a First Amendment, and it is still true that the Supreme Court, for the most part, respects that First Amendment, with the exception, of course, as we said before, with the exception of commercial speech. The First Amendment, particularly when it comes to politics, is still adhered to in the United States. So we don't have to suffer these fools. But this is really despicable and horrific to see the European Union descend to this kind of level, and to abandon it, as I said, to abandon its Western heritage like this. There you have it. Europe marching itself slowly but systematically towards irrelevance economically, irrelevance culturally, towards ultimately towards. All right, I'm gonna have to find some kind of solution for this. All right, one of the things going on in the world, one of the things that's going on in the world you might have read about is the replacement of the government in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a Muslim country on the northeast side of India. where a country that has been ruled for a long time by Sheikh Hasina, the world's longest-serving female politician, the world's longest female dictator, if you will, and you know, she. Certain measures that she had put together resulted in massive riots, massive demonstrations by students. Hundreds died while her government sought to silence the protesters, ultimately leading to the collapse of her government and ultimately leading to her having to escape Bangladesh and basically seek refuge elsewhere. In the meantime, a new government has been appointed. The government has, you know, the new government that's been appointed is being led by Muhammad Yunus, an economist and a Nobel Prize laureate. Why is that not working? A Nobel Prize laureate, Muhammad Yunus, I think was the guy who started the whole micro-lending phenomena, won a Nobel Prize for that. He is heading up a government of really technocrats, a kind of a non-political government, to try to stabilize things in Bangladesh. The army is backing him, so we'll see where that leads this country. It's a country of many, many tens of millions of people. It's a very, very, very poor country. It's a country that's mostly Muslim. It's a country that suffered through India and Pakistan. It is a country, you know, I remember when I was a kid, it was a country where there was vast famine. I mean, you can date people by which country their mother used to tell them they shouldn't leave food on the plate because their kid's starving in Bangladesh, certainly in the 1970s, early 1970s, was the country that was used by mothers all over the world for that purpose. It is a country with a Hindu minority. It is a mostly Muslim country, and one of the things that are happening as you know, as basically civil unrest continues, and as the government has fallen, and there's just you know, anarchy, and you know, the police have kind of backed off from the streets. One of the things that is happening is there is significant Islamic violence against Hindus. Not clear how many people are dying, what's going on, but there do seem to be images and videos of Hindus being lynched and stoned to death and homes set on fire. Many of them are trying to escape into India. So you've got a country in disarray right now, in a state of anarchy, in a state of violence. And hopefully things will stabilize there. Bangladesh has been a major center of Islamist activism. The Islamists have been you know, super strong in this country. Much of the violence against the Hindus is driven by this Islamist wing of the Islamic religion, but they are a big factor within Bangladesh. So it's going to be interesting to watch. This has ramifications in the sense of kind of the broader movement of Islamism, and has ramifications in terms of the potential destabilizing of that part of the world. Pakistan and India are nuclear powers. I'm not sure they want to get into conflict over Bangladesh, but if Hindus are being persecuted, and of course Muslims are being persecuted in India, you know, who knows where all of this ultimately leads. So, you know, something to watch in terms of kind of the geopolitics of what is going on in the world as we know it. Oh, what happened to that story? Yeah, I guess the story has disappeared. I had it listed here, and I must have deleted it by accident. I was going to talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about Gavin Newsom. So Gavin Newsom, over the weekend you could see pictures of Gavin Newsom, and basically helping clear homeless people in San Francisco. Out there where the tents are, and out there kind of helping evacuate the people and getting rid of them. And he's getting tough on homelessness. And Newsom is not only cracking the whip from the State House in Sacramento, but it actually, there are videos of him actually going out there and cleaning up encampments himself. He put out a press release himself about going out there and doing this work. Of course, what this really is his play for the 2028 Democratic nomination. It's his play for being president of the United States in the future. Newsom is a very likely candidate. He has to play to the middle. He has to show he did something. He knows that to win the presidency, whether in 2028 or 2032, he's going to have to deal with the criticism around homelessness in California. So he's rolling up his own sleeves, giving credit for that, and going out into the streets and pretending that he cares and actually doing something supposedly to deal with the problem. Let's see, a few other stories we can cover quickly. Here's a depressing story. So you probably all know, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. You probably all know, we've talked about this I think in the past, that in Hong Kong there are trials. The Hong Kong is being trying, prosecuting, sending to jail its democratic activists, the people who went out into the streets and who supported a democratic movement in Hong Kong and objected to Chinese takeover of Hong Kong. Many of those, including the newspaper tycoon Jimmy Lai, who also happens to be a British citizen, have been found guilty and sent to jail. Anyway, some of those guilty verdicts have been appealed to the Hong Kong Supreme Court, the Hong Kong's highest court. Now, it turns out that in Hong Kong's highest court, there is at least one judge who used to be on the UK Supreme Court, David Neuberger. David Neuberger is a former UK Supreme Court president, and he now sits on Hong Kong's highest court. Anyway, I've told you that I think the heroic story of Jimmy Lai and what a giant he is, and a huge fighter for liberty and a huge fighter for freedom. Judges should be defenders of liberty. They should, a judge like this, if he can't defend liberty, should resign. But Neuberger is basically a pawn of the Chinese, and he should be condemned. And I think his British citizenship should be revoked. He's clearly not acting based on the principles of good British, thoroughly by anybody, any civilized person in the world. Let's see, we've got three more stories. Okay, we've got two German states are going to be holding, East German states are going to be holding elections on the 1st of September, so really coming up soon. In one of those, Thuringia, the AFD, the extreme far-right political party, is in the lead. It actually is, according to polls, going to get 30% of the vote. Another leftist but anti-immigrant, these are the national communists, I don't know, but kind of a fascist leftist party, anti-immigration nationalist, as compared to the statist fascist AFD. It's called Wagenknecht, named after the woman who leads it. It's going to get 19%. So basically 49% of this Eastern German state is going to vote for pretty radical, out there political parties. With the Conservative Party, the traditional Christian Democratic Party, only getting 21%, which basically means the AFD is probably going to be the political party is going to set up just in the government, but with the potential of being the majority. And proto-fascist political party. The pandemic stress and isolation on young students, some can barely speak, sit still, or even hold a pencil. I mean, this is absolutely right. The idea that during the pandemic, young kids had to wear masks, young kids were prevented from interacting with other children, the idea that they were prevented even from interacting with some adults, and even then had to wear masks, and that they could not go to school, that they were kept home, that they did not play, they did not, you couldn't even go outside, right? During the pandemic, you weren't supposed to go outside. You couldn't go to a playground. Kids couldn't play with one another in a playground. They were also in an environment which was, where fear was encouraged and fear was emphasized. These things have real, not pretend, but real consequences. These things have real consequences in terms of growth and development, and you know, these kids' ability to become, you know, normal students and normal human being, you know, human beings in the end. The first few years of life as a child are incredibly important for development of cognitive skills and other skills for children. What happened to children during the pandemic? What the government did, and what many social institutions, maybe the one more than any other, teachers' unions, what they did to children during the pandemic is criminal. That in and of itself, there should be investigations. There should be, you know, they should really be, you know, people should be asked, and they should bear some consequences for what they did, and the recommendations about children and about schools and about playgrounds and about children in masks. Just unbelievable, just unbelievable. And yet, almost nothing is done. You know, the pandemic's behind us. We're obsessed with conspiracy theories instead of actually looking at what actually happened and who the real victims of a lot of these proposals were. Now, you know, there were many victims, and you could argue about that, but probably the worst of all of them were these little kids running around with masks on, indoors, outdoors. And remember, this was obvious at the time, and we talked about this at the time. Children were the group least susceptible to COVID, least threatened by COVID. They were not even, you know, transmitters of COVID as a risk factor. And yet, the way we protected them, supposedly protected them, you know, the way they were treated, the way they were isolated, the way stress was placed on them. Everything about COVID, everything about the response to COVID, everything the way COVID was managed from beginning to end was, you know, was a fiasco. And the fact that we've learned nothing, from it, except to hate our neighbors, except that a bunch of conspiracy theories maybe happened, except for the nonsense, is is absurd. Now COVID is just a tribal. It's a virtue signaling, tribal issue, where depending on what tribe you belong to, you take a particular position about COVID, vaccines, and so on. Science, reality, don't matter. All right, we'll finally end with a positive story, I guess. Sometimes justice is done by, I don't know, the forces of the universe, if you will. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a certifiable nutcase who is a congresswoman from the great state of Georgia. Marjorie Taylor Greene, put some real money into the stock of Donald Trump's company, the Digital World Acquisition Corp. This was the SPAC that landed up buying Truth Network and taking it public. And of course, in a show of support for her presidential candidate and for her hero and for the man who makes MAGA MAGA, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the MAGA congressman, if ever there was a MAGA congressman, she bought stock for $50,000. The day she bought the stock, it had opened at $118.8. This is, I think, when they listed, and it closed at around $67. So even on the first day that she made the investment, depending on when during the day she made the investment, she might have lost almost 50%. Recently, this stock has traded as low as $24.88. It is quite possible that Marjorie Taylor Greene has lost 80% or 79.06% of her initial investment. One can only hope that that is indeed the case. I for one have no problem wishing bad things for bad people. I like to think that justice does happen in this life, in this world. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the villains in the world today, and I hope she's taken a huge financial hit on another villain's stock, that is Donald Trump. So they deserve each other, and yeah. Anyway, that's where we are with news on August 13th. August 13th, 2024. Just checking to see that nothing new is happening. Donald Trump hosted a space. I wonder what that's all about. Is that the interview with Elon Musk? Or is he just rambling? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody can check out X and tell us what is actually going on with him. Just one other quick one. The Kursk incursion, the incursion of Ukrainian forces into the region of Kursk within Russia, basically the invasion of Russia by the Ukrainian military, is ongoing. It continues. The Russians have moved forces, so there's a lot more resistance to the Ukrainians, but basically, the whole system is under stress from. Okay, what's going on? Right, the whole system is under the Russians are under real stress from the fact that here the Ukrainians can launch an attack into Russian space. They can take 1,000 square miles or square kilometers. Yep, I mean it is pretty amazing. Israel's buying F-15s from the United States. I'm not sure why it's buying F-15s. F-15s are not typically. It's not what I would have expected. Not what I've expected them to get. All right, that story we talked about. So I think we're kind of caught up on the news. All right, let us leave it there, and nothing's happening. All right, I'm just checking to see if anything's happening in the Middle East, because it could happen any minute, but nothing has indeed happened. So I think we're all good for now. All right, where are we? So remind everybody that this show is sponsored by individuals like you, individuals listening to the show, watching the show. Couldn't do it without you. So please consider making a contribution on Patreon or on yaronbrookshow.com/membership. Without the support of people like you, couldn't do the show, couldn't fund it. The funding is coming from you, from nobody else. There's nobody else to fund this. So thank you. Oh, we've got 256 watching this on X. That's cool. Yeah, I see it here. News Roundup 813. It's live on X. One of the things that are live on X. That's great. Those of you watching live right now, please consider using the Super Chat feature in order to again support the show. Super Chat feature, you can also use stickers to support it. The Super Chat feature is really nice because it allows you to shape the show. That is, you get to ask questions, and that is what I will talk about. I'll talk about what you want me to talk about, and you can do that again by basically just asking a question and putting some dollars behind it. All right, let's go to Applejack. Applejack 8. Applejack 8. What do you make of Buffett's cash holdings? What does the stock market volatility have to do with Japan? Oh, God. I mean, Buffett has sold a lot of stock and is holding quite a bit of cash. I think he did that a few weeks ago in anticipation because I think, according to his belief, a lot of the positions he had and a lot of the stocks he had were getting to a point of being overpriced. That is, that the expected return on them did not justify the risk of continuing to hold them. And as a consequence of that, he sold a lot of positions and is sitting on cash, waiting for a market downturn that could yield an opportunity to, invest at lower valuations. Warren Buffett is very good at buying low, selling high, which is kind of the basic principle of finance, right? Buy low, sell high. And while almost nobody does that well, and while almost nobody knows when a low is a low and a high is a high, Warren Buffett seems to have done a pretty good job over the years in achieving exactly that. So the stock market in general peaked earlier in July, at around mid-July, and since then has come down a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if Warren Buffett was selling stock as the market was reaching its peak. It has come down quite a bit since then and then gone up again. I don't know if he bought on that dip or if he's still waiting for even bigger downward movement by the stock market. You could argue that Buffett might be anticipating a recession in the United States, but I mean, I would basically interpret it as him waiting for opportunities, him not seeing opportunities right now, getting out of stocks like Apple that have done very, very well for a long, long time, but is seeing problems in China. I think Buffett is very sensitive to Apple's problems in China. I think he cut his position by half in Apple, and sitting on the cash and waiting for opportunities. I think that's basically the bottom line of what he's doing. In terms of what the stock market volatility has to do with Japan, There's a lot of uncertainty about the Japanese economy. There is a lot of uncertainty about interest rates in Japan. There's a lot of uncertainty about the value of the yen and how the yen is trading relative to the dollar. I'm trying to find here. I have somewhere here a. All right, let's just look yen. Dollar. What's going on with the yen and the dollar? But the ratio between the yen and the dollar has been quite, quite intense, and there's a lot of trades that are done across the United States and Japan that try to arbitrage or try to take advantage of the gaps in interest rates and in exchange rates between the two countries. And, some of that got out of whack earlier, earlier this month, which caused a lot of traders, a lot of volatility in the markets. While I don't think anything fundamental is going on, there was a lot of speculation that led to a lot of volatility, which led to a lot of uncertainty. But I don't think there's anything really fundamental in terms of Japan that is driving the U.S. markets. I think the U.S. markets are primarily being driven right now by people trying to assess the true values of companies. And this is particularly in the tech space. I've told you for a long time that I think tech seemed overvalued. It seemed like the assumptions being made by investors were that things were only going to be good in the future, that the prospects for the future were incredibly rosy. And when you get bad information about the potential for the U.S. economy itself, when you get bad information about the potential for other economies, from Japan to China to Europe, and their ability to buy all this tech, one has to consider the valuation of these tech companies. For example, if you look at Tesla, Tesla can't compete with the Chinese electric car manufacturers. It's not clear Tesla can compete with the German electric car manufacturers at the high end, and it certainly can't compete with the Chinese electric car makers on the low end. Now, everybody says Tesla's not a car company. Tesla is a charging station company. Tesla is an AI company. Tesla is an information company. All of those things are true, but they leverage off of the fact that it's a car company. And if it fails as a car company, none of those things have any value. So I question how valuable Tesla is as a car company, given the competition and given the history. The cars margin on sales of cars is very, very low. And I don't know if Tesla can be one of the winners in the race for manufacturing automobiles if we ever allow China to import their electric cars into the United States. Now, we might not, in order to save Tesla, which is 100% tariffs that Biden has placed on Chinese electric cars, is basically to save Tesla and to save the big three for now, who are very bad in electric cars. I think the long term is going to be that the Germans are going to own the high-end electric car business, and the Chinese are going to own the low-end electric car business. And I don't think the United States has much of a role to play here. So I think all of that is saying, is Tesla really worth it? The other thing that happened, to some extent, hasn't happened fully, and we'll see when it happens, is that some of the steam, some of the energy behind AI has come out, and people are questioning, is AI as valuable financially, not as a technology, but financially as valuable as people might have thought? And to what extent are the valuations that are being provided realistic? So the Nasdaq came down a lot from its high, I guess, on July 10th, and it's come down quite a bit. But even coming down as much as it has, the Nasdaq is still up for the year, not up a lot. It's up, 2% for the year. And it's over the last 5 years, it's up a huge amount, right? It's up, I can't tell exactly how much it's up. 118% over the last 5 years. What's it up? No, year to date it's up 14.7%. So I don't know where this. 2.39 is just today. It's up 14.5% for the year. So the Nasdaq is still up humongously, as Donald Trump would say. So it came down. It might come down some more. I think it's probably still very optimistic in terms of the valuations, but we'll see. We'll see. So I think that explains it. I think too much emphasis is being placed on volatility in Japan and the exchange rate between the yen and the dollar and what will happen to the Japanese economy. As an explanation, I think most of the explanation of what's happened to the U.S. stock market has to do with valuation, rethinking of the valuation of American companies, and the steady increase, particularly in tech, that has led to a 14.5% increase in those companies' value over the last since the beginning of the year, and it was much higher than that as of July 10th. Henry, hi Yaron. Thanks for all the great work. As someone from the UK, keen to get your view on Farage as a solution. Bad on immigration, but recent interview with Kissen seems good in economics. Please link with Kemi, Bradenoch to save the UK. I will. Unfortunately, my next trip to the UK is going to be very short. I'm actually doing a debate at Cambridge on whether the NHS should be privatized. That'll happen in late November 28th. I think it's actually on Thanksgiving in the United States because I'll miss Thanksgiving. I'll be in Cambridge University for the debate. So I'm not going to have a chance to see Kemi on that trip, but she's going to be in opposition probably for the next few years. I'll have some opportunities to meet up with her. I'm hoping that on a longer trip to the UK, I'll have an opportunity to see her, talk to her, meet with her. We'll see. I don't trust Farage, is the bottom line. He strikes me as a sleazy. I don't like him. He jumped on these UK riots way too quickly, so he says good things about economics. Do I believe him? Do I believe that if he actually got into power, he would execute on those? I don't know. I don't think Farage is the solution. I think the solution has to come from somebody like Kemi, an immigrant, no less. It has to come from, I think it'll come from the Conservative Party. I don't think it's going to come from Reform. I think Reform is too anchored to the anti-immigration, somewhat xenophobic, anti-EU, and position. Now, I'm glad to hear that in his interview with Kissen, Konstantin Kissen, he had some positive economic positions that he articulated, and I really hope that sticks, and I hope that is what he carries forward. I just don't trust him. I get a sense of an opportunist, of somebody who will say and do what is necessary, in a sense, figure out where the wind is blowing and go that way. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he really believes the economic stuff that he says. The other thing about it is, even if he believes it, it's not what animates him. It's not what excites him. It's not what's important to him. We need somebody who believes in these ideas, animated by these ideas, really, really, really is going to push for them. Because it's not going to be easy. The United Kingdom is not a free market place. It's not a place where these ideas are easily going to be adopted by people. So whoever picks them up in a leadership position in the UK is going to have to be a passionate advocate for them. Is going to have to really go out there on a limb to try to sell them. Is going to actually have to be a salesman. And I don't think Farage will do it. I just don't think he would. I don't think it's that important to him. Michael, what is your favorite quote from The Fountainhead and your favorite quote from Atlas Shrugged? God. I don't have favorite quotes. And I certainly don't have them memorized. I have favorite scenes maybe, but I don't have favorite quotes. And I don't memorize stuff. I don't hold things like that. So, sorry. It's not something that I hold. I don't remember particular quotes. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that I love, the speeches, scenes, but not specific quotes. Sorry. Michael says, do you think the perpetrators of October 7th really hated life or get off on the power trip of being able to take life? Well, I think it's the same thing. I think that people who get off on a power trip to take life really do hate life. They hate their own life. They, are haters, they're nihilists. They want to see life burn. They want to see life extinguished. They don't mind taking the risk of being killed themselves because they hate life. I think the idea that Islamic terrorists hate life like we love life, they love death. They love the idea of jihad. They love the idea of martyring themselves in the name of a higher cause. So, this power trip, the fact that it's a power trip, the fact that raping and pillaging and slaughtering and maiming and torturing other human beings, the fact that you get a thrill out of that, the fact that you get anything out of that, suggests that you are a hater of life itself. And that you do not value your own life. Somebody who values their own life cannot do that to other human beings who are innocent, not as an act of self-defense, but just, it's just impossible. Yeah. I mean, they love death more than we love life. And it's our death that they start out with, but it's their own death. It's their willingness to kill us is just symbolic of their hatred of their own life. So when you love death, what that means is you hate life. Michael says, why do we all have different personalities? We have different personalities because we are born with different genes that shape us materially in different ways. We experience the world differently. We have different experiences. We're exposed to different things. And so, since knowledge, and therefore our psychology and our personality, are created by three things. The hardware that we have, the DNA that is basically responsible for the fact that we all have different inclinations, we have different talents. Second, we experience the world differently. And third, and most importantly, we make different choices about those experiences. We choose to focus on different things because we're not deterministic. We might, two kids in exactly the same environment might choose to focus on different things, might choose to interpret those things differently. So if you add genes and environment and then you overlay them with something that's incredibly significant and where we have an infinite array of choices, and not all of them are, It's not like it's not like it's clear which ones are good and which ones are bad, particularly when we're young. We're making choices about focusing on all kinds of different things in our environment, which all of that is ultimately going to shape our experiences. It's going to shape our conclusions. It's going to shape our emotions. Those conclusions are going to shape our emotions, and our conclusions and our emotions, which are all shaped by our choices, are going to shape our personalities. And then as we become more conscious, some people can actually rethink, if you will, those conclusions and therefore reshape their emotions and actually shape their own personalities, which actually shape the personality of what they are going to become. So there's so much going on. There's so much optionality in life. There's so many different things that you could be doing, could be thinking about, could be focusing on, that it's not surprising we have different personalities if our personality is what comes out of all that, all those choices, all that volition applied to reality, to experience. All right, Andrew says, listening to Rand talk about the importance of conflict in fiction, is there a corollary to needing conflict in real life? Not the collectivist need for social conflict, but a sort of tension involved in value pursuit. Yes, absolutely. You get this with ambition. You need to be ambitious. Now, ambition means doing something hard. To be ambitious is not about doing easy, simple things. It's about doing something hard. It's about challenging yourself. And that is going to create some stress. So I wouldn't call it conflict, because that's not a conflict. It's not a conflict between you and, there's no conflict between you and reality. But there is stress. Can I get it done? How do I get it done? How much work do I need to get it done? So stress is a good thing. Stress is not a bad thing. I mean, stress targeted at the achievement of values. Stress that helps you focus your mind on getting things done. Stress that focuses your mind on, doing things right. That kind of stress is a good stress. It's a healthy stress. It's a motivating stress. And living a stress-free life is, Jennifer says it's boring. Yeah, it's boring, but I bet you a stress-free life is also a value-free life. Because one of the things with values is you have to act to achieve them. There's a certain stress that comes from that. And then you have to keep them. And there's a stress that comes from the need to keep them and not losing them and not abandoning them and not having them taken away from you. So, stress should fluctuate. There should be periods of very high stress, periods of low stress, periods of medium stress. Stress is something that, you shouldn't be constantly in a high stress mode. You shouldn't be constantly in a low stress mode. You should be fluctuating depending on, what you're doing, what values you're pursuing, what you're trying to achieve. So, and the more ambitious you are, the more stress you will have in your life, but also once you achieve your values, that stress will disappear. And it's not like you have to be single-minded and it's only the one value and therefore only the one stress. Life is full of different things that you're pursuing. Some of them generate low stress, some generate high stress. There's no optimal level that you hold. It's something that fluctuates over time, constantly, during the day. Actually, my Whoop tells me how stressed I am. I'm pretty low stress generally, except when I exercise, and I'm high stress. But yeah, I mean, funnily enough, when I do these shows, stress levels do not go up a lot. So according to how my Whoop measures stress, which I don't think is necessarily very accurate. Let's see, Richard is quoting, One man's socialism is another man's neighborliness, says Tim Waltz. I wonder what his neighbors think of that. My neighbors don't seize my property. Yeah, I mean, socialism is not being nice. Socialism is not voluntarily helping your neighbors. Socialism is not, about neighborly assistance. Socialism is about coercion. It's about egalitarianism. In a sense of from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. So socialism is a coercive system that is fundamentally a system of violence, a system of taking from some to give to others, of sacrificing some for the sake of others. But, Waltz is I'd say a soft socialist. He's a leftist. He's a big believer in redistribution. He's a big believer in the state having a significant role to play in our lives. And, I wish we had a candidate who, wouldn't take much for a candidate to earn our vote when the alternative is somebody like Tim Waltz. It says a lot about Trump. It said a lot about the unique evil that is Trump, that he is finding it so difficult to stand up against Kamala and against Waltz. Because it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. These people are bad. Colt, this is random, but one of my closest friends from my birthday got me the complete works of Plato and Aristotle. I'm happy about that. Thanks, Yaron. Yeah, that's a pretty cool present. And it seems like your friends have kind of tuned into you, maybe because of me, maybe because of your exposure to the Yaron Brook show, or maybe because of just your general interests, that you are philosophical and that this would be a real value to you. So good for your friends for having, having that insight about who you are and what interests you and what's important to you, and finding a great gift to provide to you that can be really is and can be incredibly meaningful to you. That's great. All right, guys, we are deep into the second hour of the show. Let me remind you that we have goals. So we're about $100 short of our goal for the second hour. So please consider making a contribution. There are a lot of people watching right now, a lot of you on Twitter, a lot of you here on YouTube. Please consider coming over, and if you're on Twitter, coming over to YouTube and making a one-time contribution, value for value. You're getting a value. You're listening. You must be value of some value. Payment for that value is how we trade with one another, how we relate to one another. So please consider doing that. If everybody did just a little bit, we would easily be at the $100 that we need to be. You can do a sticker. You don't even have to ask a question if you don't have a question, or you can just make a statement, a comment, and I will read it. Nick, I'm 19 and work full-time while in college. My peers seem to have a negative view of working while in school. Is this just a generational phenomena? God, I just don't know. I don't know your generation that well. But I think it's pathetic if they have a negative view of that. I worked when I was in college. My wife worked when we were in college. And, I think it's what you should do. I don't know. Now, you work full-time. I don't know how you do that. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I don't work full-time. But that's pretty impressive that you can work full-time and go to college. You should be complimented for that. And But I don't know if it's a generational phenomenon. I don't know. I work part-time in college, particularly I worked quite a bit in the summers, and then part-time during the year. But I don't know what is driving this, a certain level of entitlement. Yeah, I mean, it would be good. It would be good if they got into the habit of working. I mean, my guess is you're going to do well in life if you can work full time in college and go to college. Then nothing the workplace after college will throw at you will be a challenge for you. You'll do great. So you just take it as I'm doing the right thing, and I'm prepping myself for life, and I'm working, and I'm putting money, and I've got my own money I'm earning. There should be a huge boost to your self-esteem, and to hell with the rest of the kids who don't get it. All right, Michael, when is it not appropriate to mind your own business? Well, I mean, there are lots of circumstances where it's not appropriate to mind your own business. I mean, in the face of real injustice that you see around you, it's not appropriate to mind your own business. I mean, injustice is something. I mean, imagine if the cops took, or if we all as a society took the approach of minding our own business. Somebody murders, I don't know, their spouse. Mind their own business. Why should we intervene? Why should we do anything about it? I mean, that's the extreme, right? But the point is that the person who did the murdering is a threat to everybody. They do not value human life, and therefore they're a threat to everybody. And therefore you cannot mind your own business. You have to, it is your business. So there's a sense in which mind your own business is always, but you have to really carefully think about what is your business and how your business is being affected. And there's a lot that happens in the world that is your business. And when it is your business, you should intervene. So I'd say injustice generally is something you should definitely get involved in. And I don't know if there's something going on anywhere where there's a real injustice being committed, you should speak up. You should take a position. You should do something about it. It's one example. I'm sure there are others. Shazbad, $100, got us to our goal. Please review the song War Pigs by Black Sabbath. God, Shazbad always is there to challenge me. Black Sabbath. All right. He's going to send me the link by email. Thank you, Shazbad. I'm thankful for Shazbad doing this in spite of the fact that I still owe him like 50 reviews that I'm behind on. Hopefully we'll get to soon. Michael says, why are property taxes in Texas so high? Well, because Texas government is not a small government. It's still quite a big government, and they have no state income tax, and they have to fund what they fund otherwise. So they use property tax to fund, I guess property taxes primarily to fund their local governments. But, other states have income taxes, and they use some of the income taxes to bolster local governments who have a shortfall on the property taxes. Property taxes are the way schools are typically funded, and states often supplement what is raised from property taxes with income taxes. Since there is no income tax again in Texas, they have to find other taxes to make up the difference. Property tax is one way in which they do that. Michael, what did you think of Alex O'Connor's debate with Craig Biddle? I'm not sure Craig knows what he's talking about. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I'm not inclined to see it. I'm not that interested. I'm interested in it more in terms of I want to hear what Alex O'Connor has to say. I probably listened to the Biddle debate if I ever got to debate Alex O'Connor myself. But I'm really not interested in what Craig has to say, and it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't really know his stuff that well. Michael, is objectivism the scientific method applied to living? Yeah, I think that's right. I think philosophy, that's exactly what philosophy should be doing, and I think objectivism, I think Ayn Rand does that. She's applying the scientific method to, I think you could say that objectivist ethics is a scientific method applied to living. Objectivism as a philosophy is broader than that, but so it's metaphysics. There's a sense in which it's applied to living, but not really. It stands apart from that. So yes, I think that's a pretty good way of thinking about it, particularly the ethics. Michael, why do we allow billionaires to exist in our altruistic world? Because I think that in countries like the United States and elsewhere, they realize that billionaires create benefits, right? If we take all the money the billionaires have, then we reduce the incentive for people to become billionaires. And there is some understanding, even in our altruistic world, that billionaires are the ones who are productive in our society. They create new businesses. They change the world. And you can hear this from politicians and economists and elsewhere. We don't want to discourage that. We don't want to discourage them from doing that. So we want to keep them around as an incentive for other people to become billionaires. We have to tolerate them. So while the world is altruistic, again, there's still elements of the Enlightenment. There's still elements of the Enlightenment and elements of utilitarianism that basically say, yeah, we're not going to sacrifice this person completely because we wanted the benefits that his existence provides for us. Oh wait, maybe you could reserve a WeWork office for your next show. Yeah, I need to figure out, maybe there's an office close by here. Or, I don't know, maybe I can buy some device that can give me a stable, high-speed internet connection. The problem with that is that a lot of the stuff I've seen where you get a device like that is that if the service provider deems you as using too much bandwidth, they will throttle it in the middle. I've had that happen to me in the past with devices that I've bought that provided internet connection. So I have to find a service that, some kind of 5G wireless thing that will not throttle the bandwidth, that will not throttle it, once I use a certain amount of bandwidth. We will see. Now, as you can see, the internet connection stabilized at a high speed, and now it's fine. And that's the thing. It was fine, and then it crashed, stayed at a very low rate, and then it got better. I don't know if that's because one of my neighbors were on the same pipe, and they're watching a Netflix movie, and the movie finished, and they went to bed. It's hard to tell exactly what is driving this, but I'm renting a place. There's a Wi-Fi. I think the Wi-Fi is shared by other people in the building, and it's affected by their use of the internet, not just by mine. Michael, will Iran defeat Israel without firing a shot? No, nobody's going to defeat Israel. Israel's not defeated. Israel might not do the right thing. Israel might weaken itself. Israel might miss the opportunity to actually win. That's the biggest threat. But nobody's going to defeat Israel with shots or without shots. It's not going anywhere. Michael says, I wish there was more advice on having a healthy relationship with abstractions. I think the best advice there is, and I think the best person to provide you with that advice is Leonard Peikoff. I would definitely scour the Leonard Peikoff courses. I don't know, Michael, if you have listened to Leonard Peikoff's Understanding Objectivism. It's a course that he did. It's also been transcribed into a book. Understanding Objectivism is very important, and I think has a really good description and advice on how to have a healthy relationship with abstractions. I think his courses on induction, particularly objectivism through induction, his courses on logic, all of these will provide you with good ideas about how to deal with abstractions, how to concretize them, how to make them perceptual, how to reduce them, how to induce from concretes to get the abstractions. All of that is something that I think Leonard is the best source of material from, and that you can get it in a number of his courses. I would definitely, his courses on OPA, he had a number of lecture series on Objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, advanced seminars that he did. There's a lot of content. You can learn so much, so much from listening to Leonard Peikoff courses. I encourage all of you to do so. They're all available for free on YouTube on the Ayn Rand Institute channel. Michael says, it's weird to be a sane person in the modern world. I mean, God, most people out there are sane people. They might not be right. They might not be philosophically correct. They might not be healthy psychologically always. They might not be but I don't think they're insane. I think most people, overwhelming majority of people, are sane. So I don't think it's right for you to think of yourself as as this extraordinarily sane person in a world of insanity. I don't think the world is insane in that sense. They're irrational, but irrationality is not a mental illness. It doesn't mean you're insane. Anyway, Michael, I don't think there'll ever be another Kant, because there were holes in Aristotle that evil was able to exploit. There are no holes in objectivism. Yeah, but objectivism is not common out there, so there can certainly be another Kant, not in relationship to objectivism, but in relationship to the state of an existing world. Now, it's not clear that there needs to be another Kant. The world is, where we're heading, but I really don't. I don't think that the objectivism is what you're going up against, at least not anytime soon. Maybe one day, and hopefully that day will come soon, that objectivism is what you have to challenge, and it's going to be very difficult for them to challenge it at that point. But, it's, so again, I don't think that's the world in which we live in yet. Michael says, why do blacks trust Democrats? I think because historically, at least, Republicans, that is since the civil rights movement, because this was not true before the civil rights movement, but since the late 60s, early 70s, Republicans have been the party which has embraced more racist attitudes. Indeed, it was, and whether it's racism or whether they view it as racism. So, for example, Goldwater's objections to the Civil Rights Act caused a lot of blacks to turn against the Republican Party because they viewed his stance as a racist stand. It wasn't. He was right to object to those provisions in the Civil Rights Act, but it was misunderstood and misinterpreted. Since then, it has often been Republicans who have taken stands that have been more on the side of the racists, and I think blacks associate the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act. They associate politicians caring about their plight, their legitimate plight. They associate with Democrats, not with Republicans. Michael says, did capitalism start in Amsterdam or the UK? Well, it depends what we exactly mean by capitalism. Capitalism certainly got its first, the very first ideas that were the basis of capitalism ultimately, the ideas that set capitalism in motion, came out of Amsterdam and England. Even John Locke, who to a large extent is the philosophical father of 19th century capitalism, went to Amsterdam because England became inhospitable to him when James came to the throne because of his views on toleration and because of his views on religion. Amsterdam had a number of thinkers who were, pro-individual rights implicitly, even though, they were just starting to define and think about what it was. Spinoza, of course, was in the Netherlands. Spinoza is a key figure in the early part and the beginnings of the Enlightenment. So to the extent that the Enlightenment made capitalism possible, the Enlightenment, to a large extent, is born in Amsterdam. All the printing presses, not all, a significant number, majority of the printing presses of the Enlightenment, the places in which the books were printed and from which they were circulated, was Amsterdam. So Amsterdam was a crucial place for the Enlightenment to happen, particularly at its birth. And that is what made capitalism possible. It's also true that Amsterdam is where you had the first stock exchange, and where you had the first culture at a cultural level that actually admired and celebrated wealth, admired and celebrated merchants. And so you could, so that died in Amsterdam to some extent, and it died as Amsterdam became less prosperous, as it became less successful economically, and was reborn in England. And ultimately, England is where you saw the full manifestation of capitalism. But you can certainly argue that Amsterdam is where the first sparks of capitalism arose, the first elements, culturally and economically and philosophically, first started. Soupy Cask, did we overreact and exaggerate COVID? If so, why? Yes, of course we overreacted. We went nuts. COVID was devastating, it was horrible. But it was horrible to a particular group within our society. That group was primarily old people and people with pre-existing conditions, obese people and people who were sick. COVID was very deadly for those people. A significant percentage of those people who got it found themselves very, very sick, and some of them died. But for young people, COVID was not a big deal. It never was. For healthy people, COVID was not a big deal and never was. Now, again, not to say for everybody. I know very healthy and young people who died from COVID. But that's rare. For the vast majority of the population, it was no big deal if you were young and healthy. Now, we wanted and should have focused on protecting the old. We should have protected the sick. We should have protected the vulnerable, and basically left everybody else alone. But we panicked. And we reverted to kind of statist, one-size-fits-all remedies. Now, why did we do that? We did that for a number of reasons. We panicked because Donald Trump was president, and that's what he did. He buried his head in the sand, and by the time he got the head out of the sand, things looked like they were out of control. The hospitals in New York were overflowing. And he was the first advocate for locking everybody down. COVID was not deadlier than the flu for children. Indeed, the flu is deadlier for children than the flu, as far as I can remember. I haven't looked at the stats in a long time. I'm happy to look at them again if it's required. But absolutely, I do not think it is true that COVID is deadlier than the flu for young, healthy people. For young, healthy people, the flu is not deadly and COVID is not deadly. And if COVID is deadlier than the flu, it's deadlier than the flu by very little. If you were under 40 years old and healthy, not obese, you had nothing to worry about COVID, any more than you would have to worry about the flu and other things. So, again, the numbers, I can't remember the numbers. We had the numbers, the percentage of people who die of COVID. What's his name? Amish, nailed it early on when he was on my show in terms of what percentage of people actually die from it. But it was skewed dramatically, much more than the flu is skewed, towards older people. Towards older people. I'm talking about pre-vaccine. I mean, you saw, I remember in February and March when the first data was coming out of China, it was absolutely clear that COVID was not a risk factor for young people. Even coming out of China in March, and that continued to be true through the vaccine. So no, I said it at the time, and I say it now. If you were under 40 and in good health, and I was well over 40 and in good health, and I was never worried about COVID. I got vaccinated primarily because it was more convenient to get vaccinated, but not because I worried about COVID. I didn't. It was a bad flu. Okay. If you're healthy, you survive a bad flu. So we panicked because we ignored it for months. We panicked because it wasn't clear what could be done about it, particularly for older people, particularly for certain demographics. But we also panicked and overreacted because of egalitarianism. We didn't want to say obese people stay home. If you're thin and healthy, you can go out, no problem. We panicked because the authorities didn't trust Americans. We panicked because the instinct of politicians is statism, is authority, is dictating from above. So so that's what they did. They used the Chinese model. And, that's what politicians do. All right. All right, I'm just going to look at something here quickly. Let's see. I think the actual mortality rate from COVID was something like 4 per 1,000, which is so. No, I mean, Ian, I think your numbers are wrong. I don't have time now to go in and do the research and find them, but there's no way at age 40. I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If I am wrong, I'll admit it. I'll check on this. But there's no way that at age 40, COVID was 5 times worse than the flu. COVID was 5 times worse than the flu on average across all ages. And it was much more than 5 for people over 80, and it was much less than 5 for people under 40. So, and maybe at 40, it was probably not 5. It was probably quite a bit less than 5. But for children, it was basically, I think it was less than the flu, if I remember right. But, I'm not going to argue it now because I don't have the data in front of me. Right? And if you go back to my shows on COVID, or you go back to my interviews with Amish, he got those numbers and those statistics right. And we had tables of mortality, divided by age and all of that. And, unless my memory is completely shot, there's no question, and I said this over and over again during that time, that, the differences in age were vast and dramatic, and you had nothing to worry about if you were young and healthy. I'll say it again. And I'm not sure you should have, if you were in your 20s, and certainly if you were under 20, I wouldn't have gotten vaccinated. I don't think it was necessary. and children should never be vaccinated. It's just not worth it. I mean, even though the vaccines are super safe, it's just the risk is so low. You don't vaccinate against low risk events. Michael, leftists are bizarre. They want to knock ability and hate achievement, yet they push their kids to get educated and be high achieving elitist snobs. Yes, absolutely. They want everybody else to be sacrificed, but they're not going to sacrifice their own. And this is the split, the reality that we live with, right? This is the reality we live with. We live with this reality that that altruism tells us to sacrifice, but we don't really want to sacrifice, and we certainly don't want to sacrifice our kids. So we demand that everybody else sacrifice, but we don't do that. Michael, why did the COVID lockdowns end? Did the American sense of life kick in and the powerlessness could no longer maintain that level of control? No, I mean, look, I think the lockdowns ended when it was obvious to everybody, including the fearmongers and including the panicky politicians, including everybody, that they could no longer justify. It's not like politicians got together and said, ooh, we want to lock everybody up. Let's lock everybody up. Let's show them that we can control them. That's not what they did. They said there's this horrible virus. It's killing people. Let's lock people up. Let's lock people in their homes. Let's do something stupid and irrational, like forcing people to stay at home. And I'm not talking about for a couple of weeks in New York when the hospitals were overloaded. I'm talking about let's just keep them in their homes because that's easy for us. If we don't keep them at home, then a lot of people will die and they'll blame us for it. And then when people stop dying, we'll let them out, and they do let them out. And what they notice when they do that is, people agree to be locked up. This is now part of my toolkit. But it's not like politicians want us to be locked up in our homes. Politicians are bad people. They're evil people. But they're not that explicitly bad. They're not that conscious of what they're doing. They go for the low-hanging fruit. So the path of least resistance. They're lazy more than anything else. And they thought that the political consequences of letting people roam around and death rates going up, as they saw it at the time, that would cause them more harm than locking people up. And at some point, when that risk went away, they had no basis on which to keep people locked up. Michael says, you are helping a lot of people psychologically and spiritually while changing the culture simultaneously. Thank you for that. Appreciate it, Michael. Really appreciate that. Michael says, do these school shooters want to feel powerful? What makes them weak? They can't overcome adversity, so they become bitter, and bitter people are dangerous. Yeah, I think they do become bitter. I don't think they ever feel powerful. I think a lot of them feel numb in life. They don't feel anything in life. And there is this idea that to feel something, you have to be close to death. Now, I think what the school shooters probably discover is that they're shooting all those kids. They're not feeling anything. It's not like suddenly they're having an orgasm. It's not like suddenly they're feeling powerful and efficacious and great. I think they probably discover as they're shooting people that they still don't feel anything. And that's how they die. They die not feeling a thing. And really what they are is just really, really pathetic human beings. Michael, did ancient Greece have slaves? If so, why are they regarded as freer than we are today? Oh, nobody regards ancient Greece as freer than we are today. Nobody, as far as I know. Yes, ancient Greece had slaves, absolutely. Slaves weren't necessarily of a different skin color, though they could have been. They could have been a defeated enemy. And ancient Greece was not free. Women had no rights. unless you owned, I think, property, you had no rights. So the ancient Greece was far from a free society. Certainly far from as free as we are today. We're much freer today than ancient Greece. So I don't know who thinks otherwise. Raymond, how to ensure police and military efficiency? If it is a necessary monopoly, would you make military bases an exception in being anti-public property? Yeah, although military bases would probably be leased by the government and probably not owned by the government, but leased by the government. How do you ensure the police and military's efficiency? Well, do you want the police? What does efficiency mean? I mean, efficiency in the police and the military has to be measured differently than efficiency in making widgets, and there has to be a whole process by which that is determined. What, for example, making laws. What's efficiently making laws? What are efficient laws? That is what you need a political system. You need a political process in order to determine those things. And the military and the police need to be governed by a political process. They need to be governed by a principle, the principle of individual rights. And it's that principle that makes them efficient. If you had competing militaries and competing police, they would not be efficient because they would not be protecting individual rights. That is the measure of efficiency in the context of military and police is individual rights, not how much money you're spending per criminal caught, but are you protecting the rights of individuals? And that you can only do with a monopoly over the use of retaliatory force. All right, 3 last questions. What's your opinion of Impressionism and the paintings like Monet? I like it. I don't understand why Rand was critical of it in some essay. Well, I mean, you can like it and still be critical of it. You can say, yeah, I mean, there's certain things that are pretty here. But, as Ayn Rand emphasized, what the Impressionists do is they blur reality. They convey at a metaphysical level. They convey at out-of-focus epistemology. They convey a mind not in focus. And I think that's all true. So Monet and the other Impressionists are mixed. Some of his stuff is quite pretty. The colors are pretty. The scene that they're portraying, the landscape that they're portraying is pretty. But they are also conveying an epistemology, a mind, that is out of focus, that is not completely in reality and does not, relate completely. The bad things about it. Nate, if you think radical Islamists are so dangerous, why are you not advocating for securing the southern border? There have been lots of reports of ISIS and other terrorists trying to cross into the United States. Because I think those reports us through the southern border. Look, for security clearance, and if they are found to be radical Islamists, they're arrested. And if you do that, well, you're basically saying anybody can enter the United States. Unless you're a radical Islamist, a criminal, or carrier of infectious diseases. But in order to enter the United States, you have to enter in one of these 10 spots. And we set up 10 stations in which people can come in and we can do the background checks on them. And then you say, okay, anybody entering not in those 10 spots, we're going to assume you are a terrorist or a vicious criminal, and we're going to shoot you when you spot you. I'd be okay with that. So, make the border such that anybody who's not an Islamist can easily come in and screen out the Islamists and prosecute them, right? But to punish everybody who's not an Islamist, because there's a handful of Islamists coming in, is the wrong way to approach it. It's just the wrong way to approach it. Start with securing the ability of non-Islamists to come in, and then it will be easy to filter out the Islamists and get rid of them. Bree, if you get a mobile hotspot from a different carrier, you can use the Wi-Fi and it fails, your phone should automatically go to the phone's cell service. Yeah, but again, the problem is that the mobile hotspot that I've tried in the past, now maybe this has changed, and let me know if you know of a better service. The mobile hotspots will throttle your internet connection if they see you using a lot of bandwidth. Now, if there's a mobile hotspot that does not throttle the connection, a European mobile hotspot, let me know and I will purchase it and I'll use that. Your younger self, when you became a father, favorite father moment? Oh, that's a big question. God. I mean, I think the biggest thing you can do is just enjoy it. Embrace it. It's a phenomenal experience. It was a lot of fun. Babies. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in particular that I would say. Just, I mean, I'd say this. It'll completely uproot your life, but ultimately in a good way. That would be the most things. Favorite father moments. There's so many, particularly when they're young like that. They just have a better solution for the Wi-Fi, which is great right now. So, go figure. But I will be back tomorrow around the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. I'll try to do a little bit earlier, but I will see you all